Hafez Antero, everybody. My name is Gio Sagana, and for our ED300 Educational Psychology Teachback, I will be teaching Chapter 7, which is the Behavioral Learning Theory. For our bell work today, we're going to be doing a 1-minute paper, which we will be preparing a 1-minute timer and your writing or typing device. You will be given a question to answer, but the catch is that you are only able to answer it in 1 minute. There is no sentence requirement, just as long as you provide an answer. And your question is, as a teacher, how can complimenting your students' work be beneficial? For our student learning objectives, which is the SLOs, 7-1 defines operant conditioning and at least 5 of its basic principles. And 7-2, we will describe at least 3 educational applications of operant conditioning principles. Our classroom norms are very simple. I just want you guys to stay engaged, practice active listening, and also valuing respect. But most of all, I want you guys to have fun throughout this process. Our warm-up activity for today is reward or punishment, where I will read you guys the scenario or prompt, and I want you guys to decide whether the outcome was a reward or a punishment, and you will also have to include whether the reward or punishment is increasing or decreasing the behavior. I will explain all the answers at the end. For scenario 1, a student turns in their homework early and the teacher gives them a sticker. Is this considered a reward or punishment? And does this increase or decrease behavior? Scenario number 2, a student is distracted on their phone, so the teacher takes their phone away. Is this considered a reward or punishment? And does this increase or decrease behavior? Scenario 3 is one student is making distracting jokes during lectures, so the teacher sends him to the timeout corner. Is this considered a reward or punishment? And does this increase or decrease behavior? Scenario number 4, a dog does a trick and receives a treat after. Is this considered a reward or punishment? And does this increase or decrease behavior? And lastly, scenario number 5, a football player hit one of the opponents and was benched for the rest of the game. Is this considered a reward or punishment? And does this increase or decrease behavior? So for number 1, the answer is reward and it increases behavior. For number 2, it is considered a punishment that decreases behavior. Number 3 is it is a punishment that decreases behavior. For number 4, it is a reward that increases behavior. And lastly, number 5, it is a punishment that decreases behavior. So now we're going to be going into the chapter overview. 7-1 is about operant conditioning, with 7-1A being about the basic idea, and 7-1B being about basic principles. 7-2 is talking about the educational application, 7-2A is computer-based instruction, and then 7-2B is behavior modification. So what is operant conditioning? In 1913, John Watson argued that psychology loses its credibility as a science if it is continuously focused on internal mental and emotional states. So the solution to that is studying what could be directly observed and accurately measured, which is the external stimuli that people experience, and what people did in response, which is the behavior. The basic idea. B.F. Skinner inspired behavioral learning theories, with his theory being operant conditioning. It's defined as voluntary responses that is strengthened or weakened by the consequences that follow. Operant conditioning follows the idea that organisms learn to operate on their environment to obtain or avoid particular consequences. So now we're going to be moving on to positive and negative reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is defined as strengthening a target behavior by presenting a stimulus immediately after the behavior has occurred. Some stimulus examples include praising, recognizing, and opportunities for free play. And an example of positive reinforcement includes a student turns in their work on time, which is the target behavior, and a gold star is given to them, which is the stimulus. For negative reinforcement, it is defined as removing unwanted and aversive stimuli whenever a target behavior is exhibited. And some stimuli examples of this would be alarm clocks, nagging, and sirens. And an example of negative reinforcement is the driver puts on their seatbelt, which is the target behavior, and to stop the car from making any annoying siren sounds, which is the aversive stimulus. Next is punishment, which is defined as weakening a target behavior by presenting an aversive stimulus after the behavior occurs. Type 1 is known as time-honored responses, which presents an aversive stimulus after an undesired response to weaken the behavior. Some examples of this is scolding, paddling, and more. And then type 2 is known as timeout, which is temporarily removing the opportunity to receive positive reinforcement. Some examples of this is a rowdy student is sent to the corner to sit alone for 5 minutes. So the last one is extinction, which is not considered a type of punishment but weakens the target behavior by ignoring it. An example of this would be a mother ignoring a whining child. So there are other principles such as generalization, discrimination, and shaping, which we will be talking about. Generalization is responding in similar ways to similar stimuli. An example of this would be students who were positively reinforced, such as being praised for using effective studying skills in history class, will use the same skills in math. And then discrimination is responding in different ways to similar stimuli, which includes elbows are off the table when eating at a fancy restaurant, but are on the table when eating at a fast food place. And then lastly, shaping is another principle which has complex behaviors that are shaped by reinforcing closer approximations to terminal behaviors with gradual speed, allowing for an understanding that each step is crucial. An example of this is breaking up difficult words into smaller chunks to help with pronouncing it better. So now we're going to be moving on to types of ratio, which is basically 4 types that was described on the textbook, with the first one being fixed interval. You are rewarded after a fixed number of times and no matter how much is done in between. For example, there are weekly quizzes. After one quiz is done, students don't study as much right away, but as the quiz day comes closer, they study more. And then next is variable interval, where rewards are after random amounts of time and they are consistent. An example of this is there is a surprise quiz. The student know that it is coming but don't know when exactly. So this features steady studying. Another type is known as fixed ratio, where someone is rewarded after doing something a set number of times. And an example of this is students have to read 5 books to get a prize. And then lastly is variable ratio, where a reward is given after something is done a random number of times. An example is a game character drops a rare item when you attack them, but not all the time. The player keeps fighting because the next one might drop. So now we're moving on to 7-2, which is the educational applications of operant conditioning principles. Skinner had an observation when their child went to school that there were a lot of excessive use of aversive consequences, long intervals between students taking tests or giving work and getting corrective feedback, and poorly organized lessons and workbooks that did not lead to specific goals. So there was an approach that Skinner made, which was clear goals, teaching first things first, present subsequent material in small logical steps, and allowing students to learn at their own rate. One of the ways is known as computer-based instruction, also known as CBI. It is believed that students would learn more through this approach, and some results shows that there are effective tutoring systems. Students use simulations more than being taught traditionally, and through meta-analysis, there are some research that shows that CBI students are 21 percentile points higher than traditional instruction students, and also CBI students are seen at the 83rd percentile versus traditional students at the 50th percentile. But through overall evaluation, better teaching is more effective than technology, and CBI should be used as a supplemental tool. So the first type of CBI I will be talking about is drill and practice, where there are benefits to it, such as practices knowledge and skills, presents feedback, check answers, and also keeps track of errors. The next one is tutorial, which teaches information in 3 ways, with one of them being linear, where everyone starts at the first step and goes in order, branching, where a path changes depending on a student's response, and dialogue, where it is similar to teacher-student conversations. And then lastly, problem solving is another CBI that had a lot of benefits, which teaches new information for students to apply what they learned and uses newly learned information to solve realistic problems. Another type is known as integrated learning systems. It combines tutorials and tools to track performance and provide feedback, and it pertains to subjects such as math, reading, language arts, and also sometimes science. These students learn at their own pace, they take tests, and also receive enrichment to further their success. So far, integrated learning systems have had mixed results and have been proven to work best for low achieving or at risk students. Lastly, we're going to be talking about behavior modification. Behavior modification uses operant conditioning to change behavior. So, to strengthen behavior, there is something known as shaping, which takes small steps towards target behavior, token economics, which basically talks about earning tokens to gain rewards, and contingency contracting, which is a formal agreement between a student and a teacher. Below this is an example of token economics. And then next one is weakening behavior, with one of them being extinction, which is ignoring an unwanted behavior, timeout, which is removing the students from a reinforcing situation for a short time, response cost, which is taking away rewards or tokens for misbehavior, and also punishment, which is the most controversial due to negative outcomes. And a lot of educators do not recommend this in school. So, for our main activity today, I know that we're all in different strands of education, such as early childhood, rehabilitation and human services, special education, and elementary education. So, our activity today is called Dear Future Me. As future educators and counselors, you may need to utilize the conditions, methods, and aspects that we learned in today's Teachback. The goal for this activity is to have you write to your future self on using the concepts of positive and negative reinforcement effectively. You can use the following questions or prompts to guide you, such as explaining to your future self what positive and negative reinforcement is, explain how it can positively affect your future career, how can your future self use it to foster learning as a future educator or counselor, and what is one information about reinforcement that you want your future self to remember. So, what did we achieve today? With our student learning objective, we are able to define operant conditioning and at least 5 of its basic principles, and we describe at least 3 educational applications of operant conditioning principles. And for our assessment today, I want you guys to do this website called Fill Out. You guys can scan the QR code and do the assessment, but you have to do particular steps to ensure that you actually submit it. When you answer a question, please click Answer to see your results. And then once you finish reviewing your results, you have to click Submit to complete the survey. Thank you so much for joining me today and having me teach you about Chapter 7, which is Behavioral Learning Theories. I hope you guys continue to use this for your educational path and for your future. Thank you guys so much again.